as well as interviews with the SEL team members who design and execute trainings along with government stakeholders. We also studied a lot of our training reports, dashboards, attended a few trainings to see how the framework is being used as well. And we analyzed this data using thematic analysis. So before we share the findings, we also wanted to share what the framework looks like and how it's operationalized so that the findings can sort of be connected in that context. So various scholars have identified, and have laid out metrics to really look at how can you measure training quality. And of course, we want to look at the entire spectrum, right from the workshops going down to classroom adoption. But for the focus of this study, we are focusing on just the training part of the professional development, and therefore we wanted to sort of share some of the conceptual underpinning of our framework that we have identified. So this is based on Allison's training evaluation model, which is an adaptation of the Kirkpatrick evaluation model, if people are familiar with it, where she has adapted it by adding a level 0 to the suggested method by Kirkpatrick. So some of the elements that we will focus on today are level 0, 1 and 2. I won't elaborate too much on them, but just briefly share some of the elements of our framework and the purpose of it. So level 0 is basically trying to establish a shared purpose, identify objectives for teacher training, what's really relevant, what's the need. We spoke about need analysis, contextual trainings. So we do this through formation of a core group where we have teachers, faculty from different state and district bodies, and the purpose of this structure is to co-design and execute training modules. We conduct training need analysis through surveys and FGDs. And we also do pilots of training modules before rolling it out statewide. Level 1 or React is basically the phase of the training where we try to look at what are the initial perceptions of participants through the workshop that is being delivered. What is their feedback on how relevant they found the training? How confident are they feeling to take learnings back? And also understanding their feedback on the facilitation style and the learning experience that was present. And level 2, where we focus on learn, where we do this by trying to understand what is the understanding level of participants at different cascades of the training. We do this in 2 ways, which I will elaborate in the next slide. So how we calculate cascade loss is by actually understanding the level of participants' understanding at different levels of cascade. So if there are 3 levels of cascade, we share an exit ticket with the same questions, which are divided into knowledge, application, and contextual based questions, and the same questions are administered at each cascade level. And the difference in this understanding level helps us to understand what's the extent and nature of cascade loss. And we validate this data by looking at a lot of other qualitative data. For example, participant feedback on how relevant the session was, the facilitation, and the coordination of the session, and what's their confidence level to take these learnings back. The other tool that we use is an observation tool where we really look at the quality of facilitation, the kind of learning environment that the facilitator is able to hold for the participants, and how engaging the session was for the participants. So these are the 2 tools that we use. This is an illustration of what it actually looks like when we get data. So this is an example from one training where you can see the data from 2 levels of the cascade. So here we get to understand the overall participant understanding in the 5th row. And you can see that in level 1, day 1, it's around 88.7% versus the same training when it went to level 2, it's fallen down to 82%. And not only the overall understanding, we're also able to see the breakdown of where that would be. For example, you see application has fallen from about 91% to 79%, versus surprisingly contextual has increased from 79% to 85%. So these are really interesting trends for us to engage with and to deep dive and understand, okay, what's really bringing these numbers up, and that's where we use a lot of the qualitative data, which we get largely from our observation tool, where we try to really understand what's the learning environment within which it's happening, because especially in the context of experiential and practice-based trainings, we do see that it's not just the knowledge loss, but it's also the learning experience and how it's transferred. So this is a snapshot of the indicators that we look for within the quality of facilitation. So now I'll hand it over to Rajat.
Thanks, Srinidhi. So, when we were looking at findings, when we were done with our stakeholder interviews, we realized that the initial question which we started with to look at the basically efficiency of this framework, which we have sort of developed, we would have to use 3 themes. And these 3 themes also actually came from the literature. Edison has stressed upon the fact that there are context-related factors and then there are process-related factors, which together actually determine the success of any cascade training, right? Here we sort of adopted these themes, these factors to look at the framework efficiency. So we are using the same factors which have been identified in the literature to look at efficiency of our own framework. And the third one, the third finding, the third theme which we have used is to actually look at how this data speaks to us. What do we do with this data? Once the data is collected, what is it actually telling us to do? Now, the first one is about context factors and cascade laws. So, in the literature, there are many context factors which Edison has sort of identified: politics, structures. So, these are factors which are not directly related to the training content, but do have a bearing on the overall success of the training, right? So, when we were looking at it across the literature, we found that context seems like the most sort of relevant factor, right? So, if the trainings are relevant to the contextual realities of the teacher or the classroom, teachers definitely find it to be more relevant and more helpful to them. So, in order to do that, what does our framework do? We adopt this method called need analysis. We do a teacher survey called Voice of Teachers. Here, data is collected through surveys and then further analyzed with an FGD. So, 2 layers of data collection to understand what are the actual needs of the teachers at this point in any context, and to then further develop content and strategies to deliver the training on the same. Now, the content is also developed in partnership with core groups. Core groups include your DIET principals, your mentor teacher. So, in a way, it's participatory from point 1 to point n. So, that's the approach we are going in with. Additionally, there is another strategy we identify at the we sort of use at the level 0, which is a pilot training. So, pilot trainings help us in 2 ways. The second I will delve into later. But the very first way it helps us is that it tells us if the training is relevant or not, right? So you design training for, let's say, you are designing it for 4,000 teachers, but then you do it with like 100 teachers first to understand if they are finding it relevant, and only then you take it to the scale. Now, talking about the process-related factors. So one of the things which came out from literature as well as through our discussions with the stakeholders was that the content in a way is centralized in nature, is pre-decided, the training content is decided, right? But it's the facilitator's motivation, skills, proficiency which is actually going to determine if there is a cascade loss or not. So facilitator proficiency or trainer selection emerged out to be one of the key things which should be taken into account when you are planning a training. Now, how does our framework help with that, right? So, like Srinidhi mentioned, we are not just looking at participants' engagement or trainees' understanding level. We are placing equal importance to facilitator, how they are facilitating the session. The data is collected through participants' feedback and training observation tools, right? So, there are 2 ways we are using this data right now. One is to obviously see if a facilitator is in need of any particular support in any training. We can immediately plug in that gap and give them the support. From a long-term point of view, what it helps us to identify a select sort of cadre of trainers, right? So let's say in Delhi where we are offering trainings, if there are 100 trainers, 100 facilitators who are consistently offering or scoring well in their facilitator proficiency, they can then be selected to be core group of facilitators. Going forward, they will be the selected or preferred facilitators for us, right? But all is not great, as I say, in any framework. There were some issues which were raised, which definitely need more focus for us to go back and see how we can improve. One is around the concerns around data accuracy, right? Because the term we are using, or the term which is actually conventionally used, is exit ticket. And the moment you say exit ticket, people treat it casually. They want to exit the session as soon as you tell them it's an exit ticket. So there is a whole bit of that, and then people taking it casually, sometimes internet not working, people going back, people copying each other to fill the exit tickets, right? All kinds of things. So all of it together actually hampers the data accuracy. Then there's a whole bit around how data is being collected, right? there is one thing to say that you have designed the training in a participatory manner, but as Alison has also sort of highlighted, that a shared level of understanding, a shared set of goals, objectives have to come together to make any training successful, right? So for us also, I think one of the things we eventually want to work on, and in a way we are working towards, is that even the data collection tools we are using have a shared understanding across various stakeholders. Yeah. Another thing I think the concerns which were raised during the interviews was that data needs to be shared with each and every stakeholder, right? At this moment, data is being shared, but I would say it's not streamlined, right? There are different stakeholders who are receiving the data, and then there are a set of stakeholders who are not receiving the data for many reasons. But there is a demand from facilitators to receive that data so that they can improve, they can plan on their own. So that is another gap which we endeavor to fill going forward. And then there is a whole bit around establishment of official communication channels between facilitators, between trainees, between stakeholders at various levels. Yeah. So this is the last bit around usage of collected data. So very straightforward. One thing which the data enables us to see is what are the lagging areas of this training, right, and how they can be improved. So looking at the participant understanding level, we can immediately see if it's the application which needs more further support, if it's actually the contextual application or the knowledge part of it. Wherever that gap is, we can fill it. What we would say is in sort of a value addition here is the fact that there are many pre-training strategies which are existing in the discourse, need analysis or pilot to that to say, but our sort of approach of doing ongoing data collection and ongoing data analysis enables us to actually respond very quickly when the problem arises, right? So if on day X, if there is a problem on one day and we are looking at data, we can possibly plug in the gap by Tuesday or Wednesday and respond to that. So real-time tangible changes is something our framework can sort of make, including. So all in all, from literature and from our sort of interviews, we have sort of understood that even if trainings are planned, well designed, well in accordance with the principles which have been identified in literature, there is still a possibility of cascade loss and information loss, owing to many factors. In that case, you need measures which can actually quantify the principles we are talking about. So from principles to quantifiable metrics, measurement tools, and from there, actionable insights. That's what we are trying to do, and I think in future we will be able to call it cascade win and not cascade loss. So that's what we are looking forward to. Thank you everyone for your time.
Thanks, Rajendra.
So we are still working on this white paper. There is a process of working on this white paper. We are assuming that it will be completed by November, but we wanted to present what we are looking at and what are the key questions that we are trying to address to this. The focus of the research is to examine challenges and opportunities when it comes to teacher education space in India, specifically focusing on the uses of technology. And the questions that we are trying to address are briefly divided into three parts. One being, what are the current challenges when we talk about the teacher training or teacher education in India? Followed by, what are the technology-based solutions that are available in the ecosystem? And then coming to the third part of it and analyzing these technology-based solutions, trying to understand where are the gaps, what are the challenges, and what are the opportunities when it comes to these tech-based platforms. Not get into the research methodology in detail, but what we are trying to do in brief is we are trying to look at the mixed methods approach, trying to understand the qualitative and quantitative data that is available. We are also doing semi-structured interviews in the states that we are currently working in with teachers, school leaders and assistant leaders, trying to understand their experiences with these platforms. We have also been able to document certain case studies over the years, trying to see how the usage has been. We are also analyzing the documents that are available, for example, National Education Policy, teacher competency frameworks, training resources that are available for teachers, and also trying to understand and analyze how these existing learning platforms are working out in terms of how users are experiencing these platforms. We have divided the presentation into two parts. The first part was mostly focused on on understanding the current challenges and status of teacher training in India. But since we have been talking about since morning, we'll keep it a little shorter and focus on the second part a little bit more, which talks about the technology-driven solutions that are available. We wanted to start with presenting a case study. We wanted to tell you about one of the teachers that we have been working with. His name is Mr. Kali Gado. He works in a remote village in Arunachal Pradesh. The village that he's and the school that he's teaching, he's the only teacher. That's the one teacher teaching the entire school. And that also means that he's teaching multiple grades at the same time. The school has very limited access to basic amenities which include electricity, infrastructure. There are certain things that are happening to be able to support teachers in the state in terms of their professional development. For example, twice a year, state conducts these trainings for the teachers. There are NGOs working in the space who also conducts trainings for the teachers. But Mr. Dalikaju, despite being very eager to go and attend these trainings, is not able to attend these trainings since he's the only teacher in the school. If he go out and attend the training, that means that he has to keep the schools closed for 3 to 5 days, which is not a possibility. And there is no substitute teacher available. How it impacts him is that he feels professionally isolated. He is not able to meet and cater the needs of the students, keeping in mind that he is catering to diverse students at the same time. Also, he is not familiarized with the modern pedagogy that he can introduce to the students in the classroom. As in the morning also, we were talking about how national education policy as one of the part focuses on how there has to be a continuous teacher development in which at least 50 hours has to be spent by the teachers in their training. But when we look at the reality of Mr. Dalikaju, that is not something that we are able to make up because of the various factors that are resulting into this. We wanted to, after this, talk a little bit about the status of the teacher training in India and trying to understand how we can support teachers like Dalikaju better. But everything that we have written in these slides have already been talked about by all the people, and we would not want to delve deeper into this since these are all the things that we have discussed, including the cascade model that the previous presenters have also talked about. Just wanted to take you through a few of the points of what are the key shortcomings that we have been able to understand about these trainings. We'll also summarize the 3 slides that we have put together. Number one, a lot of times when you are doing the teacher training, there is a very less focus on talking about what is being done by the teachers on the ground, which is working out for them. Our teachers are doing a lot of things which are the best practices in their geographies and adapted certain things to their context. And when we are doing these trainings, we are not talking about those aspects a lot. There is very little scope for peer learning when it comes to these training aspects. Learning has to be personalized. If I want to learn something, I should be able to personalize and design how that learning would look like for me. But that's not happening when it comes to the training aspect for teachers. They are not asked the things that they would want to learn, and hence that also becomes one of the aspects. बच्चों की तरह हम लोग भी अलग-अलग तरीके से सीखते हैं. And one of the things that we often see are these trainings that there are traditional methodologies and traditional ways these things are conducted, which are not including different modalities for different type of learners to be able to learn. There is no mechanisms to be able to check the quality of these trainings and to be able to provide a continuous support once the trainings are over. And lastly, we also have seen that there is a lack of training programs for school leaders to be able to support teachers when they want to develop their capacities. From here, we wanted to understand how the technology-driven solutions that are available right now, how these are addressing these gaps. And from this point, I would want to give mic to Tyasha to be able to take this forward from this point.
Alright. So for the purpose of the study, we looked through 6 different types of such platforms that are already available for teacher training or different kinds of resources that are there. The first three here are Diksha, which we all know. It's a national platform. All teachers can put on information there and resources there and also learn from it time on time. There's Firki, which is a Teach for India platform. We have Samarth Eager, which is meant more for higher education or resources. We have Test India, which is again an open resource that's available, lots of videos available there. I'll come to the second one here, and then we have something called the Tata Class Edge, and there are many versions of that, which is like a supplementary tool within the classes, like a smart board, right, which helps the teacher to do different kinds of things, almost like a TLM or sorts, right? And the second one here is Abhyas. It's something that we are building. It's not only a teacher training or a teacher resource material, but it's also meant for school leaders, which is another big aspect that we feel is right now missing in the conversation on how they are able to support the teachers, and try to see if the gaps that we see in the other platforms, how can we look at meeting those gaps through this particular platform. This platform is very, very new, so we ourselves are learning, and if you have feedback, please do share. So while we are doing the study, we are looking at 4 platforms to do the comparative analysis: Diksha, Firki, Samarthika, and our own. We have broken down the comparative analysis into multiple areas, which we have formed a rubric for, right? So when we talk about scope, which is the first area, we are looking at what is the types of things that that particular platform is being able to cover, right? So is it talking about different kinds of subjects? Is it talking about the different grade levels that are there? Is it talking about their own professional development beyond the subject knowledge itself? And how are they able to build their own understanding just beyond saying how do I teach well and my pedagogy, but how am I also doing better as a teacher? And we all spoke about a lot on value systems that the teacher need to have, so on and so forth, right? And we talked about the content type, which were what are the different things that we're covering with respect to pedagogy itself, leadership development, what kind of teaching learning resources are used, etc. And who is bringing in this content. So we're looking at where is this content being drawn from. Third is the customization or localization point, which Nishka touched upon a little bit in being able to say, am I being able to customize my learning journey based on my needs? Am I being able to use it in a manner that suits me when it talks about inclusion, right? So different language availabilities of the platform. If I'm somebody who's deaf, am I being able to access resources in an audio manner, so on and so forth. So that's one level. The fourth one is similar when we're looking at personalization of my learning journey and getting recommendations to say, okay, if this is something that I've been able to cover or this is something that I've done, I want to learn more about a certain aspect that I feel I need help with. What is a recommended set of courses or other resources that I can use post that? One big aspect on the platform is user experience in itself. Is it intuitive? Is it engaging? Is it something that I'm liking to do? And I will come back to the platform because most platforms adoption is a big issue. So how do I address something of that kind? We also looked at integration and accessibility, and here is, for us it was very important because we as an organization work in Goa, Tripura, Nagaland and Arunachal Pradesh, 3 of which are, like by name we know that they're very difficult to reach because of internet, just basic network, even going to places is tough, right? But in a state like Goa where we all think, okay, it is accessible, but there are multiple such remote places difficult to reach. So how does a technology platform reach people? Is it available offline? Can I download resources in multiple areas of those kinds? We have interactivity to say that, okay, how are there spaces for peer discussions? Are there forums where I can talk to teachers from around? We heard today that teachers, leaders do want to learn from other people. They don't want to be within their own space. How can I learn more from others? Am I able to track my progress even going forward? Okay, that I wanted to start on a basic level for say better lesson planning, but what does my progress look like? To say how do I improve on that better? Community features, like I said, what are the peer learning spaces available on the platform itself, and if I want to reach out to somebody separately, what is the way for me to do that? And the last part is how are these platforms getting integrated onto this school system itself with the government, right? And that's a big one for us again. We primarily actually work with school leaders and system leaders, and we use the Shala Siddhi framework, which is a tool to evaluate schools. If I were to use these technology platforms, how do I bring it onto the framework itself to study and understand better about how overall school improvement is taking place, keeping the teaching in the center of it for the child's learning outcomes. So just to conclude, these are all the different rubrics that we've been using and trying to incorporate to say how does Abhyas as a platform that we're building will suit and address these needs that are coming up with the different technology platforms to reach more people. And hence our inquiry has been that these technology-driven solutions that have been present, are they bridging the gap or they widening it further, and how do we address that? And for teachers like Tari, who is unable to leave the school, how does he get support to be trained and for his professional development, keeping in mind these professional professional development technology-driven solutions available or not? So that's what our work has been, and that's just a little bit about it. Thank you.
Thanks for the So again, the forum is open for a question. We have 5 minutes.